Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in the chat. Today, and everybody out there, Crypto Katana and Roderick and everybody else, I've been talking a lot about treasuries for quite some time, and we're seeing really astounding things happening right now. The momentum is clear. I think in Q1 alone, 100,000 Bitcoin were purchased by treasuries, and there's lots more coming every day. It's actually more than every day. It's multiple every day. There are Bitcoin treasuries stacking on Bitcoin all the time. And it's pretty out of control. We're going to dig into that. This one's called Secret Stackers, and not just for Bitcoin, but for other assets too. So let's get into it. And it's the weekend. Yeah, happy Friday, happy Saturday if you're in Australia. This is why everyone is stacking, and not financial advice. And also, shout out to DGen EM. What's more valuable than gold? Diamonds is the investment. Answers Patreon. So much info. Go join people. You can thank me later, legends. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was a very, very kind word. And yeah, we will be talking about gold later. But before, let's talk about the crypto fear and greed. Last week, I shared this. It was at 71. Now it's at 69. So it's fallen ever so slightly, but that doesn't really matter. We now have what is called a very bullish setup for Bitcoin. We'll look at some charts first, and then we'll get into some of the secret stackers. But this is the Bitcoin 1 month 25 delta skew, and it's fallen 6.1%, meaning that the call option bets, which are the bets on the price going up, have higher expected swings than put options, people betting on the price going down. And this suggests that traders are very optimistic and they're focusing on gainers, i.e. going long on call options, than hedging or protecting against losses. So this is a really, really strong setup for a rally that we haven't seen in quite some time. But it goes a little bit deeper too, because, it's been a bumpy year so far. But also when we look at the put option skew, this is from Kobasi. Let me hide myself, stick myself on the top. Oh, I'm going to get rid of it. The put-call ratio for the stock market is also fallen to 0.55. This is the lowest level since 2020, ladies and gentlemen. The ratio has halved over the last month, and the market has experienced a very sharp recovery. You heard me. You heard me say, when we fall fast, we recover fast. And that's exactly what happened. Things are so oversold, but it was such a great gift for all of us here to be able to buy things that were literally half off in some cases. Madness. What a great experience. But checking this chart out again, so you can see the full thing. You can see the S&P 500 is up about 22% since the April 7th low, and it's up just about 1% year to date. And the volatility has fallen from 40 to under 20 in 20 days. Bonkers. Again, things happen fast. And the equity put to call ratio has declined to 0.41 again. Lowest level in a very, very long time. So people aren't hedging against risk anymore. Everybody's going long, and this is very bullish. Not only is crypto, Bitcoin, very bullish, but stonks are as well. But there's more, and I keep getting my head in the way here. This is Bitcoin versus gold. A very, very telling chart as well from Jour and Timmer at Fidelity, and he continues to be fascinated about the fact that the most negatively correlated asset to Bitcoin is gold. But one is gold, the other one's digital gold. And we spoke about Jekyll and Hyde. And in fact, Timmer mentioned Jekyll and Hyde as well. And it's an unpredictable asset, but it's taking on some weird activities that nobody can really get. But basically, Bitcoin's risk reward has continued to impress. And there is no other asset like it. Shout out to Jurian for saying that. Now, there might be a little bit of an eye chart here. Just so you know, Bitcoin's at the very bottom. That's the 5-year correlation to Bitcoin. And obviously, Bitcoin's 100% correlated to Bitcoin. But the least correlated asset is the yellow slice at the top. That's gold, 30-day Treasury bill, etc. Not correlated. Small growth stocks actually are the most correlated to Bitcoin. Hedge fund equity is up there too. So it's a fascinating little chart, and we're grateful to Jurian for his great research as well. But speaking of gold, this is another little fun story. And we hear this type of stuff all the time, but there are physicists at CERN's Large Hadron Collider. They have successfully transformed lead into gold atoms, achieving what alchemists have dreamt of for 5,000 years through modern physics. Now, the reason we care here is because if they can make this sustainable, well, maybe it is now that the price of gold is over $3,000 an ounce, turning lead into gold, you know what that'll do? That will plummet the price of gold. And it'll also accelerate the speed at which the Bitcoin will become that source of store of value. And Bitcoin will flip the gold market cap very quickly. If this continues, that's why I care about this story. But sometimes scientists can pull things off and only last for a minute or a couple of seconds, or it'll cost millions to make a little bit of gold. But we'll see if they can scale that. Again, scale is everything. But this was a fascinating piece of news and probably disappointing for the gold bugs. And another cool little story here. This is Drawdowns versus Rallies of the actual market. And again, I'm going to have to blow up this chart so I can see it a little bit. But here at the very top, you got T-bills. Obviously, no drawdown, very little upside. And at the very bottom, you've got Ethereum, drawdown 54%, upside 69%. Not good. But somewhere in the middle, you got that big thing called Bitcoin. Drawdown, minus 2%. I don't know where. This basically weekly data from 2-year high to 2-year low, just going back to 2 years. And Bitcoin is up 300% over the last 2 years. Even higher if you go back a little bit longer, like 2 years and 4 months. It's like 500%. Again, crazy. Just like Jurian said before, Bitcoin smokes all other assets, of course, with the exception of MicroStrategy and a couple of others, but it's a pretty impressive nonetheless. But let's get into a couple of price targets. Novogratz, and congratulations to Novogratz. Galaxy actually moved to the Nasdaq today. They get some nice liquidity, but he was on TV on CNBS, and he talked about how the fact that if Bitcoin can break through the previous all-time high, about 108K, then the next leg will be 130 to 150K, and then that will be price discovery. And again, things can happen very fast. And one of the questions I have that we'll get into in a minute is, where is all the Bitcoin coming from all the stacking? And that's what I need to dig more into, because it's getting a bit crazy right now. And that's what we're going to look at. And not only does Novogratz have his target, but a lot of other analysts out there are putting up some of the most bullish targets I have ever seen. These are not the moon boys from YouTube or anything like that, but these are some, pretty conservative firms out there. If you look at some of the names, you've got Standard Chartered, Wainwright, Cena, BlackRock, Fundstrat, Tom Lee, Pomp, Chamath, Van Eck, 10X Research, and GFO X Survey. All of these price targets are extremely bullish for 2025, okay? And they all have different reasons. Macro hedge, quantile modeling, liquidity boom, demand shock, supply crunch. It's nice to see Pomps talking about supply crunch, rallies, sentiment and fiat, etc. But when you break this down, you calculate the expected value of all these targets, the total amount is $278,700. That's nearly 300 grand from these. Some are very conservative firms. If you pull out the outliers, the really high targets and the low targets, you get 245,625. Call that 250K. And the median is 217K. And the weighted mean, again, pulling out the outliers, is 243,000. So this bull market has folks very, very excited. I mean, if we go over 120, 130K, I will be very excited. But seeing the 230, 250K targets, wow, we'll see where we go. And again, things could happen fast. If the US Strategic Bitcoin Reserve does happen and they start trying to build 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 Bitcoin pretty fast, and if Saylor and CEP, Asset, all these other firms do the same thing, that's it. We're going to hit some pretty crazy targets. But we don't know if that's going to happen, but we will watch very carefully. Now, this is another chart from Ecoinometrics. Shout out to Sanjay as well. Bitcoin, since the bottom of the bear, in November 2022, Bitcoin's up 500% and ETH is up 100%. So literally, Bitcoin has smoked ETH by a factor of 5x, which is quite profound. Also, other crazy news. This is from Polymarket now. The odds of Bitcoin hitting 1 million this year hit a new all-time high. It's now risen to 4%. Okay. And I won't read the rest, but that is really, really bullish too. So who knows? People like Samson Mao called for $1 million Bitcoin this year. And we'll see if he'll end up being proven correct. And even people like Adam Back are very, very big believers that we could go pretty high this bull run. So again, as we've been saying all year, despite people losing their minds, the bull market is not over. Now, that's why we're going to get into a little bit right now about what I call secret stacking. But before I do, one final story. This is from Cantor, okay? And this is the CEO of Cantor, who I think is the son or nephew of Howard Lutnick. And basically, he said, even if Bitcoin tanked by 50%, they would still be investing. And they've already dumped about $2 billion into Bitcoin and Bitcoin products, including $1 billion into MicroStrategy. So we'll talk more about some of those treasuries right now. But this is also extremely bullish, that no matter what happens to Bitcoin price, there is a stop in place for the price action, because these fellows will be buying no matter what. So let's get into what I now call Bitcoin Treasuries Are Us. And this is a play on words. There used to be a bankrupt store called Something Or Us, but now I just thought it matched. Treasuries Are Us, because Bitcoin Treasuries are everything. They are on fire. And this is just the news I'm going to share next over the last 24 hours. It blew my mind. First of all, corporate Bitcoin treasuries are completely now outstripping ETF flows. And this chart here shows you the monthly ETF flows, again, from Econometrics, with monthly public company flows since the ETFs launched. And the points above the diagonal line represent when the ETFs are stronger, and the points below the line are months when the public companies bought more Bitcoin than ETFs. Again, the treasuries are outstripping the ETFs, which is bonkers. And BlackRock is buying a ton. They're doing 300, 400 million a day, which is crazy. And for them to be outstripped by treasuries is just mind-blowing, beyond my wildest dreams. If you'd asked me this 2 years ago, I'd say, nope, that's impossible. Anyway, let's talk about some of the new players just from the last week. This is BMG. That's a Swiss from Basel medical group. And they've decided they're going to start with $1 billion to buy Bitcoin. A very aggressive strategy to stack and strengthen their balance sheet. Keyword there, strengthen their balance sheet. They're not looking to make a quick buck or whatever. They want to really hedge against fiat, which they know is weakening over time. We have a first Brazilian treasury firm now coming in too. This is Meliuz. Hope I said that correct. If there's any Brazilians in the audience, let me know. Super Soul Man, thank you so much. But Meliuz bought 274 Bitcoin for 28.4 million at an average price of $103,604. So if you paid less than that for your Bitcoin, you are beating this Brazilian treasury firm. And they're following all the same vernacular that Michael Saylor does, like Bitcoin Yield Holdings. They now have 320 Bitcoin. Again, one firm, but it's starting a trend. And we've spoken for years about dominoes falling. They're all beginning to topple really fast. Firms all over the planet doing the same thing. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what currency you have, they're stacking Bitcoin. Ukraine is preparing for the potential creation of a national Bitcoin reserve as well. Ukraine, they have a lot of stuff going on right now, but this is also on their agenda, which, again, was not on my bingo card. And Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund bought, just as slow as they bought, $512 million of the Bitcoin ETF. Well, over $500 million. And they also have holdings in other things like Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy as well. Saudi Central Bank also own MicroStrategy. And we saw this week all the meetings that were happening in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, etc. And that's not just for maybe Bitcoin, which they're already stacking indirectly here, but also AI technologies too. And the state of California also bought 276 million shares of MicroStrategy. By the way, these pension funds in places like California and other states in the US, they are huge, absolutely huge. We know that the Sovereign Wealth Fund out of Norway also owns MicroStrategy. And people wonder who's buying all this MicroStrategy. Well, here you have the answers. These players. Now, the Russian central bank as well. I thought this was also not on my bingo card. You've got Ukraine planning a Bitcoin reserve. And then the Russian central bank comes out and they said that Bitcoin is the highest performing asset. This gets the attention of people that run money, not just central bankers, people who invest, nations. It is very, very big for Russia to admit this. And you know for a fact, I'm talking about this for a while, there will be trading happening using Bitcoin, okay? Bypass rails for fiat systems. You want to sell 1 million barrels of oil or a whole bunch of gas or whatever else, use Bitcoin. That's coming. Doc Intern, thank you, and Anjo as well. It's coming, if it's not already happening. And once that happens, once Bitcoin becomes the neutral fiat for trade, that's it. The adoption will be crazy, and the money flows will be crazy, and the utility of the Bitcoin asset will be crazy. And that will be like a Metcalfe's law on steroids as well. So big news out of Russia and Ukraine. And it's all, at least to me, it gets me pretty excited. And now we also, one of the reasons why everybody's FOMOing into Bitcoin treasuries, I'm your Huckleberry. Thank you so much too. The top 4 Bitcoin treasury firms on the planet have crushed all others. I'm not talking other treasury firms. I'm talking other stocks. The performance out of Metaplanet is insane. Over 1,000% the last 12 months. At 21, which is CEP, same thing, nearly 500%, 250% in a couple of weeks. MicroStrategy, huge year after consecutive huge years since 2020, despite the bear market wrinkle, which is also a great buying opportunity. And Galaxy, again, number 4 here on the list, the 4th biggest holder of Bitcoin, has also had a very good run and an even bigger run today as well. Speaking of Galaxy, on Monday, they were trading at $19. Today, over $25. So that's a big move, $6 gain on this asset just by being added to the Nasdaq. So there's far more liquidity and far more demand for the stock now than the Toronto Stock Exchange, TSX, where they just came from. So again, everybody is stacking. Everybody's going wild for Bitcoin. And it's fun to watch. Now, a little bit of other... a little break here. There's all the Bitcoin stacking news. There's more stacking coming, but let's talk a little bit about another piece of news. Solana still rules DEX volume. This is DEX volume from March 2025 to April 2025. You can see green, Solana still rules the day. Number 2 is Base in that light blue above. And then number 3 is Ethereum, and number 4 is Binance. So if you take those 4 players alone, Binance, Ethereum, Base, and Solana, that all makes up the lion's share of everything, over 90%, which is very, very large. Now, let's talk about stocks. We talked about treasuries. Let's talk a little bit about stocks here because there's some very, very strange things happening. First of all, fear and greed for the stock market is 71. Last week, it was 69, and crypto fear and greed was 71. They've actually flipped, but they're staying real tight together, which is also very unusual. A little bit about the Optimus robots. They are coming, which is, again, staggering. Morgan Stanley, I'll turn off my screen for this so you see. Oh, I don't know what's happening. My neck. Anyway, Tesla are doing some very interesting things. Now beginning to bring analysts in to see their Optimus factory. And currently, they can build 12 Optimus bots at a time in Fremont, California, and they can make about 1,000. Their current clip is 1,000 a month, which is in line with their plan to have 5,000. Well, build maybe 10,000 by the end of the year, but some of them may not make it because they may break or whatever else, but they hope to have a legion of 5,000 by the end of the year. The next production line, this is where it gets interesting. The next production line will allow for 10,000 bots per month, 120,000 per year. And then the third line is planned to be 10,000 more powerful. Everything that Tesla does, they do it in step changes, like a factor of 10x, 10x, 10x. Then they'll get to maybe next year or sometime thereafter, 100,000 per month, which would be 1.2 million per year. And again, they'll have that legion of bots by the end of the year. But what's also more interesting too is the AI used in the Optimus robot is apparently much bigger, more complex than the one used in the cars. And so is the neural net and the telecommunication network that it uses. Remember, in places like the Gigafactory in Berlin, they've created their own 5G network for the vehicles. And the vehicles that float out of the factory by themselves and drive autonomously, they're all obviously completely up to date before they even leave the factory, so they can drive themselves. But just knowing about this, about the brain, the big takeaway for me is the car is already very smart. It can think and react in milliseconds. But now this will be able to do even more. That's why I can balance on very rough surfaces, like mulch on the side of a hill. It can walk up and without slipping or falling over. Again, this is big. They have a lot more up their sleeve than we know about. The robots are coming, and they're coming very, very quickly. Now, Tesla FSD as well. It is unlike any other self-driving solution. They can drop this car anywhere on the planet, and it can figure things out. And if you've ever been to the Arc de Triomphe near Champs-Élysées in Paris, that is the most intimidating roundabout you'll ever be in your life. This is what I call Europe's final boss of driving in complex traffic. Well, there's a video now floating around Twitter today, and yes, Tesla nailed it. And this is really, really hard, but it's only a matter of time before FSD gets launched in Europe. There were tests happening in basic Norway, the Netherlands, and now hopefully France soon too, and then Spain. And this will be huge. But let's get into some interesting stuff about how the banksters roll. This is, I don't know, maybe there's some type of fake news here or something. I don't know. But JP Morgan cuts Tesla profit estimates on unprecedented brand damage. And their analyst has an underweight rating and a price target of $120 for 2025. $120. Remember, the price is 3 times that now, more or less, at $350. So what's going on? Then we just got news that JP Morgan bought 3.43 million shares of Tesla in Q1. They've increased their Tesla position by 3.43 million shares in Q1. That's very big, but when they have a plan to buy such a large bag of Tesla, they have their analysts, perhaps I'm just speculating here, say the price should be 120. Why? Well, maybe they can bring their price down so they can buy that big bag of Tesla shares. I don't know. I just find it quite interesting. Let's see the analyst. Oh, this is Ryan. Ryan is the analyst on Tesla in front of a big Rivian sign. Maybe he likes Rivian and not Tesla, or maybe he wants to bring the price of Tesla down so JP Morgan can buy a lot of Tesla cheap. I'm not sure. Let's check out Ryan's ranking from JP Morgan. He's ranked 9,154 out of 9,558 Wall Street analysts. So there's a message in there somewhere, ladies and gentlemen. Either don't trust Wall Street analysts or don't trust banks. Do your own research, figure stuff out for yourself. And we're in this world now where people on YouTube actually know a lot more than your so-called Wall Street people. Speaking of Wall Street people, I'm Colt. Thank you for coming. This sometimes always rattles people. This is Michael Burry. Michael Burry was the one that literally clicked on to the global financial crisis, real estate crisis, Big Short, decades ago now at this stage. And Michael Burry has predicted 20 of the last 2 market crashes over the last 25 years or so. I hope you don't mind my little sarcasm. I thought that was funny. Sometimes there are people who are like ultra bears, always bearish, always expecting recessions and crashes. But he liquidated his entire portfolio with the exception of, I think, some makeup company. I could be wrong. Estee Lauder. I think he still holds some of that, but then bought a truckload of puts against NVIDIA and against Chinese companies. So we'll see. I don't know if he still has those puts. These things are always reported a quarter later or a few weeks later. And I don't know if he exited or if he's still in, but either way, just sharing the news. And the final piece of news, because we are on the topic of Wall Street, this is a reporter from Katie Martin from the Financial Times, and she was asking about or talking about Bitcoin. And of course, Financial Times has hated Bitcoin for the longest time. Every time Bitcoin price falls, they dance on the grave of Bitcoin. But she says, my teeth are scarce, but they're not worth billions of dollars. Now, I don't know if that's her grammar or anything. If it is her grammar, that's even more concerning. But that is the Financial Times. And even though it's actually serious, I categorized it as a meme because that's the world we live in, everybody. You can't trust newspapers. You can't trust Wall Street. Who can you trust? Do your own research. Trust the data. All the answers are in the data. And make sure you get the data from verifiable places too as well. So with that, everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. Hit like and subscribe. It's Friday. That was Friday Fire and all the secret stackers, not just for Bitcoin, but also for Tesla. This Treasury stuff is nuts. We'll see how far it goes. And literally, the Treasuries are buying up all the Bitcoin. But I don't know where they're getting it from. That's what I need to investigate, because the amount that they're stacking is off the hook. Unless, of course, retail investors or long-term holders have just decided I'm throwing my bags and then I'm going to YOLO into some meme coins. Who knows? Thank you so much for coming. And yes, Paulie, dead right. Sol Treasuries are also on fire. Bitcoin Treasuries, Solana Treasuries. That's it. Treasuries are us. And of course, the secret stackers of things like Tesla, which will almost 99% guarantee you revolutionize the way this planet works. Watch this space. Thank you all for coming. Happy Friday. Thanks to the mods in chat and everybody else for coming. Bye-bye.